Good morning, Jessie.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for joining me today on Michelle's Conversations That Matter. I'm thrilled that you said yes to chatting with me. You have a lot of great knowledge to share, and I'm so excited for our conversation today. So the whole point behind Michelle's Conversations That Matter is really just to highlight great examples of what people are doing in the world, start conversations that maybe people aren't having, to just really get people feeling a little bit more empowered and aware of different topics. And today's topic is no different. But before we dive into our conversation, I would love for you to take a second to just introduce yourself to the audience who's watching.
Absolutely. I'm so excited to be here, Michelle. Thank you so much for having me be part of this really fantastic endeavor that you've embarked on. My name is Jessie Spressart, and I help lawyers make their lives and their careers better. So I do that through coaching and training. Well-being and mental health is incredibly important to me. I grew up in a family where my mom was a social worker and worked for a mental health association. It was always known in my family that even if you have mental health struggles, it doesn't make you any less of a person. And so that has carried through my entire life. And I've always had a heart to help others. So my professional background is in legal talent management. I worked for a law firm for over a decade, building up their professional development department, coaching attorneys internally. And I really got a firsthand view into what it looks like when attorneys are at their best and have a good balance between working and living and taking care of themselves. And also, unfortunately, how it looks when they're not, and how that can have a negative impact on themselves and their careers, the firm, their family. So when I left the firm to go more full-time into coaching, it really mattered to me to be working with those attorneys and folks who really love what they do, but might need a little bit of help balancing it all with the rest of their life. So
amazing work. Amazing lens that you bring to this conversation, having worked with them. I love that. So let's dive right into our conversation. And I'm going to actually read this statistic because it's quite alarming. So the statistics really are staggering when you look at attorneys. So according to the ABA Journal, lawyers are 3.6 times more likely to be depressed as people in other jobs, while the landmark 2016 American Bar Association and Hazelden Betty Ford Foundation study found that 28% of licensed employed lawyers suffer with depression. And the study also showed that 19% have symptoms of anxiety, where 21% are also problem drinkers. Mm-hmm. So that's amazing when you look at those statistics. You and I were chatting before we went live, and you said probably the only other profession that's is high, or if not higher, would be healthcare professionals. So we definitely have opportunity in both of those areas. So I personally know quite a few attorneys. Some of my dearest friends are attorneys. They're friends, and then I also have colleagues and professionals in my circle. And while there is a fundamental issue with the structure, I think, of this profession around the billable hours that I know I think that the American Bar is looking at, because that's fundamentally a challenge, trying to have billable hours and then create a work-life balance. I think what's important is people and attorneys need to recognize that there's still other opportunities that they can take on that's going to help shift their well-being. And I don't think that they can see that. So let's take the first question I have for you is, can you share, what you've heard in your coaching practice around around the mindset that attorneys are having? I think there's this either or mentality where either I choose work, I work hard, or I choose my well-being. There's this fear of losing clients or this fear of not doing a good enough job. So can you talk to us about what you're hearing, what you're seeing, and sort of how you help people navigate that perception?
Yeah, absolutely. And you're exactly right. So many times attorneys' self-worth is wrapped up in always being on, billing high hours, bringing in new clients, winning, whether it's getting the best deal details and all of that, or winning a case in front of a jury, whatever it is, you're always on for your clients. But when you're burning yourself out, burning the candle at both ends, and then maybe resorting to drugs or alcohol or other uppers or downers to keep yourself going, to rev up or to slow down, it's not sustainable. There's a few things that make lawyers special. And I know lawyers everywhere are like, of course I'm special. And yes, you are. But there's a few particular things that kind of go into the psyche of lawyers at large that feed into the challenge of maintaining well-being. So I just want to go through them. The first one is negativity bias. So this is kind of the world at large, but particularly for lawyers, your brains are wired to make a threat seem worse. Lawyers are risk averse. They want to make sure that they consider everything from every possible angle, and they're wired to think about all of the ways things can go wrong. So that makes it much more difficult to focus on well-being and what is right and what is good. So we're much more likely to focus on a lion that's about to eat us than to pay attention to the rainbow in the sky behind us, is kind of how I put it. Mm-hmm. And there's the lawyer personality. Larry Richard, who's a researcher that focuses on the lawyer brain, he's found that lawyers are more likely to have certain personality traits than those who don't. So includes higher instances of skepticism, urgency, wanting to be autonomous and not depend on other people, as well as lower instances of sociability and resilience. And all of those things are things that go into focusing on your well-being. So when you don't have that quite as naturally, it makes it more difficult for you to be able to focus on it. And then finally, it's your legal training. Lawyers are trained to question, spot issues, scan for threats, like I said, be skeptical of other people's motives, and all of those things. They also often suffer from the secondary trauma of having to deal with all of their clients' problems, right? So if something doesn't go well in a case or a matter, you have to deal as a lawyer with the stress and anger and frustrations and emotions of your clients. So you're taking all of that on, and that's an added burden to everything that you're dealing with on top of your own stuff. Lawyers also tend to be perfectionistic. They want everything to be exactly right. And if it's not, it translates into you being a failure. And that is that all or nothing mentality that is just really not beneficial. Perfectionism is huge, is a major issue in the legal industry. And it's something that I work with my clients on identifying and letting go. Wow. Then two more things. We feel that your clients are never really truly pleased with your work. Again, it goes to that perfectionism, but it's never good enough. And you're always focusing on how can you be better. And then sometimes you have to act in a way that's not aligned with your core values as a lawyer. Because when you're acting for your client, sometimes they're going to do things that you don't think they should do or you don't agree with, but they're your client and you still have to represent them. And then back to those long hours that are not physically, mentally, or emotionally sustainable. So all of these things go into why it's just so hard to take care of yourself when you're trying to do a good job for your clients. That's kind of it in a nutshell.
Yeah, it's like one thing compounds the next. Exactly. I think, when I think about time, I think about our relationship to time. And I think everyone's going to be able to relate to talking a little bit about time and this sense of scarcity, right? And then you compound to the attorneys who have billable hours. So talk to me a little bit about this chronic complaint that you probably hear from your clients that there's just not enough time. And it's perceived as a luxury to take care of myself if I have time. And there's never enough time. So how is that ever going to be a reality? So, yeah.
So this comes down to the dichotomy between scarcity and abundance. And I'm not talking about abundance in the universal, put it out there and it'll all come back to you. I'm just talking about how do you view the world? Do you view the world as there's never enough time, money, experience, status, or Can you view the world in a way that says, I am enough, I have enough time, my needs are being met, I have what I need. When you start to think that way, it kind of brings it all down a few notches so that you can start to prioritize and focus. When you're thinking with this scarcity mindset, everything that comes in is, oh my gosh, one more thing I have to manage. And you get buried under a deluge of stress and anxiety because you don't really have the skill set to decide what is important to you. What are you going to focus on? What can you delegate? What can you let go of? So once you can start to think, actually, I have enough time and I'm going to take the time to take care of myself, pay attention to my needs. I'm going to get a good night's sleep. I'm going to eat good food. I'm going to move my body. And then I'm going to focus on what I need to focus on for my clients. And it will all be fine. It's all going to work out. Then you can start to really strain out the things that aren't necessary and focus on more things that are. I always tell my clients that you can't pour from an empty cup.
Yeah.
And the other metaphor is putting on your own oxygen mask before you help somebody else. And it's really true. If you've completely depleted yourself, you are not going to be able to serve your clients and your firm and your colleagues at your best. It's just not possible. And I know it's really scary to think about what you might need to do, what changes you might need to make, because you're so wrapped up and comfortable. Even though it's miserable. You're comfortable in that misery.
Yeah.
But once you realize that you can make changes, then it's kind of like a whole new world of what's possible.
Yeah, we were talking before we went live about the whole idea that now people are working from home. There aren't those sort of boundaries where the beginning of the day is earmarked by a drive in, the end of the day is earmarked by a drive home. It's sort of like very, very easy to just be working all the time, in your home office, not getting a break. And we talked about the importance of boundaries, but then you also mentioned, I forgot where I was going with this, but one of the things you said before was, can you afford not to work? Can you afford not to take care of yourself?
Right. So yeah, we were talking about how drug abuse, alcohol abuse, are all part of this epidemic that the legal industry is facing. But I also suggest that being a workaholic is part of that too, right? Not being unable to put your work down and do something else. And the pandemic has accentuated that because it's removed the infrastructure of leaving your home to go to your office, leaving your office to go home, even if it's at midnight or 1 a.m. And when you don't have the internal infrastructure, the boundaries for yourself, it makes it much, much more difficult. And we're finding, not just in the legal industry, but across the board, folks who are at home 24/7, suddenly needing to balance their work and their families and themselves and everything that's going on in the world today, right? It's all encroaching. When you don't have internal structures like boundaries and values alignment and a real clear sense of what your mission and purpose is, makes it really, really difficult to manage. And that workaholism really is so scary to think of living a different way, right? And when I talk to clients about this, they tell me and they confide that they're afraid to let it go. I'm like, well, yeah, they're afraid that they're going to lose something, and you are going to lose something. You're going to lose some of the stress that you're under. You're going to lose I always call it like the sword of Damocles hanging over your head. And then I encourage them to start imagining what they're going to gain. What can you do? What are you going to receive from your friends, from your family, from yourself, and from your job and your career by being able to be more balanced and take care of yourself? Because it really does give back.
I can speak to this a little bit because starting a company and being an independent entrepreneur it has had me working. Literally, I was working 7 days a week. My friends would just, be like, "Hey, what are you doing Saturday?" I'd be like, "I'm working, of course."
Yeah.
So I used to work almost 7 days a week, and it was really starting to take a toll on me. And finally, I said, "That's it, enough. I'm going to give myself half a day Saturday and all of Sunday to just recharge and rejuvenate."
Mm-hmm.
And I tell you, when I came back Monday morning, I was so much more focused. And I think that's what people need to get, is the ability to refocus, come back rejuvenated, feeling good, like you took care of yourself. Made all the difference for me in terms of how I feel about my work even.
Yeah, I agree. So starting my own business has been a heck of an adventure. And I struggled with anxiety myself. Am I doing enough to build my business? Am I serving my clients enough? Am I good enough? Right. And I started to let my self-worth get wrapped up in how well I was executing on my business and being a coach. And so I would kind of get those Sunday scaries, right? Sunday with like, oh no, the week is looming. And so I'd start to work on Sundays so that I could kind of get a head start. And I realized that I need to practice what I preach and put my boundaries in and be intentional about taking time for myself and for my family. And your values show through based on what you do and based on your actions. And so I wanted to make sure that I was living what I value. And so now, unless there's a really good reason, I don't work on the weekends. Doesn't mean I don't think about work. Sometimes, I'll find myself taking notes and jotting things down. But one thing that works really, really well for me is when I'm closing up shop on Friday afternoon, I plan out my next week. So I've got it all set and ready to go. And I give myself the time to think through what's gone well, what do I need to focus on? And then I put it all away. And I come back to it on Monday. I already have my plan. I don't feel behind because I've already put stuff in motion, and I'm ready to hit the ground running. And I feel a lot less anxiety and stress about what the week is going to hold if I've done that. So that may be something that you might want to try, or some of our listeners or watchers might want to give it a whirl.
Yes, I do. Actually, I do the plan your work your plan sort of thing. Like the night before I log off my computer, I have like the next day ready to go. So I sort of know what I'm doing. So I think that allows me to be able to exhale and be like, just relax for a little bit. Maybe watch some TV, have a glass of wine, because I just don't. I mean, I think it's, and I think it's harder now, the fact that I can't go to a coffee shop and work, or I can't go see a client because they're closed. It's harder because you're like, okay, well, this is my new reality, me and the dogs.
It's particularly hard for folks who are caring for family members, whether they're children or parents or other family members. These days, it's so difficult, and I get it and I see it, and that's not to be ignored, right? There are additional burdens that we have all had to shoulder during pandemic that have had a negative impact on mental health. And if you're already struggling, it just makes it that much more difficult.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So I have to tell you a story. It's a funny one, and you'll probably get a kick out of this as a coach of very busy, stressed out attorneys. So one, I don't know when it was, a couple of years ago, I was motivated to be trained in transcendental meditation. I had been seeing Jerry Seinfeld and Ellen were all talking about TM, and really it's like this, it was their secret weapon on the stress in their lives. So I find myself up in Summit, New Jersey, near where I live, taking the training for transcendental meditation. I looked around to see like who was in the room, who was taking the training with me, and 3/4 of them were attorneys. They were looking for a way to manage their stress, and they were learning TM as a vehicle to do that. So I thought, I am so in the right place. These guys, and they happen to be mostly men. I'm like, if these guys are here to learn this tool to manage their well-being, I was like, that's pretty cool. So
yeah. No, I love it. And I will say, before the study that you mentioned came out,
Yeah.
and especially since, we've been seeing more of a focus and a spotlight on mental health and well-being in the legal industry. And I'm really encouraged by that, because it means that people are feeling less afraid to speak out about their own struggles.
Right.
And we all know that one of the challenges of dealing with mental health issues is the feeling of isolation, and the feeling that you're the only one and that nobody else understands. And that leads to guilt, and again, more stress and anxiety, because how can you actually, function in a world where you're the only one, and you're not the only one.
Yes, you're not.
You're absolutely not. And when I talk to clients, and when I do training programs on stress and anxiety for firms, I always make it a point to say, I see you and you aren't alone. And, just I use those statistics to say, okay, so in this room, statistically speaking, we have people who are suffering from this. And never in a way to be like, raise your hand, but just know that people are here and they are suffering, and I am talking to you and I see you. And it's so incredible. I love that you're saying that all these guys were in there trying to learn. It's so important to be able to train your mind to focus, or to let that focus go. And lawyers are smart people. They've gone through so much rigorous training to get to where they are. So they are capable of learning something new and being able to make these changes.
I want to shift over to coaching and mentoring. Throughout my life, I've been blessed to have some amazing coaches and mentors in my life. And I've had no shame about asking people to be a mentor or someone who I could just confide in and learn from and grow from. When you and I initially met, we were talking about how coaching in the legal profession is just not something that is sort of accepted or people are open to. So can we talk a little bit about that? Because I know you in your introduction, you said that when you were in talent acquisition at your firm, people were coming to you and you were coaching them. And it sounded like you had an ideal culture. But what do you think is the challenge overall with attorneys getting support?
That's a great question. So the coaching that I did when I was at the firm was super informal. I'd go and I'd sit in an associate's office or a partner's office and ask them what's going on, and we would talk through the issues. And I don't think they knew they were being coached necessarily, right? Because that's not what the idea of coaching was. So coaching often is tied to this remedial, there's something wrong with you mindset. And lawyers are great at having a fixed mindset of whether either you're good or you're not good. And either way, you're stuck with what you've got. So if you need coaching, it's because you're failing at something. That's the historically pervasive perception of coaching in firms. It's tied again to that perfectionism and self-worth and fear of needing to do something to make yourself better. So that's what we're working with. And it's a huge challenge to overcome. But when you start to think about coaching as a vehicle to propel performance, right, versus fixing things that are wrong with you, it can really be transformative. So what we do is we talk about your values. It's amazing. Lawyers are trained to take on the values of their clients. So they don't always really have spent the time to think about what do they value in their core. And that can uncover some amazing insights and help them start to realign. A lot of lawyers are like, well, my family is the most important thing to me. And that's wonderful. But when you're working 80 hours a week, that's not how it shows up.
Right.
And I often get the pushback, well, I'm working so hard because I want to provide for them. Absolutely. That's wonderful. That's amazing. But how do they need you to show up for them? If they are truly the most important thing to you, what do they need from you? They need your presence. They need you to be there. They need you to take care of yourself. Right. So when you start to think about what you truly value and start to align your life with those values, you're able to uncover meaning and purpose that you may have forgotten about. You might have started in the law having these grand ideas of what you wanted to do and how you wanted to change the world. And that's amazing. And kind of getting back in touch with that can be so rewarding. And then you become a more effective advocate for your clients.
Right.
And again, it's not about what you're losing. It's about what you're gaining. What you're losing are the things that you don't need to hold on to. So that's what we do in coaching.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so, why I'm so passionate about being able to sit alongside and walk alongside attorneys on this journey.
Can you share a success story with us of someone maybe who is entirely resistant?
So one client comes to mind who we have just been spending so much time on what it is he's looking for, and he's feeling very stuck and kind of unable to overcome the mindset shift that is necessary to really move into what's possible, and being held back by fear and concern and all of this, again, your self-worth being wrapped up in your job. And so we've been working together for quite a while, and he finally was like, oh my gosh, I'm just afraid of what's going to happen if I stay where I am, but I'm also afraid of what's going to happen, if I don't make a change. And I'm like, okay, well, which fear is bigger? And what are you going to do about that? And he was able to kind of come to that moment of like, well, what's going on right now is not working for me. So the only thing I can do is try something new. And that was a huge breakthrough. And it's beautiful. It's so rewarding for me as a coach to be able to help bring people to that. And let me say, the thing about coaching is my clients are doing all the work. I'm just there as a guide. And I'm just there to kind of help them navigate through the process. It is all them, and they are amazing. Being able to draw upon the inner strength that they have to make a change and move forward and realize what it is they truly want and go for it.
Amazing. I mean, it sounds like you're making such a big difference in the world, Jessie. I think it's great. And I think attorneys should definitely be checking you out around coaching services that you offer. So before we start to wrap up, what would you tell? Okay, so I have like 3 questions, but what would you tell the young attorney who doesn't have a family and is so committed on building his or her practice and doesn't take any time for themselves? Mm-hmm. So I guess you're going to go back to values, but in this case, there is no family to put first. It's very easy to get lost, and I'm just going to keep working, and I'm building my firm. I'm building my firm, and that keeps you doing that. What would you say to that individual?
That's a great question. So everybody has different thresholds of how much they can work and want to work. And I am absolutely a proponent of working hard and doing your best to build your life. This is not at all, you deserve to not work or not put in a lot of effort. But to that attorney who's building his firm, I'll say in 10 or 15 years, what do you want to see? Do you want to have a family? Do you want to have traveled when they let us travel again? Do you want to have something other than the firm that you've built? And yes, the answer is always yes when we get right down to it. So then we talk about, well, what can you do now to make sure that you're building for that as well, right? Because your firm isn't going to love you back. And it's not a guarantee. And so you need to make sure that you are taking time for yourself. If you work yourself to the bone, you're going to get sick and you're not going to be able to hold it all up. So family is definitely important, but to those who don't have one or don't have one yet, it doesn't mean that you don't have other things to value. So I don't have children. My husband and I don't have kids. And a lot of people are like, oh, that's too bad. And it's the choice that we made for various reasons. But that doesn't mean that I don't value family or value that and focus on having that balance in my own life. It's an added challenge to those who do, but those who don't still need to make sure that they value things outside the firm.
Beautiful, beautiful. So I have to ask your piece of advice for maybe an attorney out there who's struggling with addiction, alcoholism, being a workaholic. What advice do you have for, I mean, I guess let's go back to struggling with addiction or maybe being depressed because they're working. What advice do you have for the attorney who is just not doing anything different, but and is continuing to struggle?
Yeah. If you feel like you're barely hanging on by your fingernails, again, there are people who care and want to help you. And there are bar associations, call them up. There are hotlines for this. Reach out to me. I will do whatever I can to help you. I'm not a therapist. I'm a coach, but you need to get the help that you need. And there is nothing wrong with asking for help and getting the help that you need and getting better. It's terrifying, and I understand that. But again, thinking about what you will gain from getting healthy and staying healthy is so much more than what you will lose by holding on to what you have. So
amazing.
Yeah.
Good advice.
I'm encouraged by seeing how much focus the legal industry has been putting on well-being and battling addiction. And there's a long way to go, but I think it's we're going in the right direction.
Great. So Jessie, how do people reach out to you and get in touch with you?
So find me on LinkedIn, just LinkedIn/Jessie Spressart. My company's name is Optia Consulting. And you can find me on Instagram under Optia Official. Those are the easiest ways to follow and see what I'm doing and get in touch. And please don't hesitate to reach out if you have questions or concerns or are looking for help either with coaching or therapy. We can find a way to get you what you need.
And you do not only one-on-one coaching, but you go into firms and you help them as well with training programs, correct?
Yes. So coaching is a big part of what I do, but I also believe that we're not going to be able to change the legal industry unless we change the way law firms work. And so I focus on programs like this, talking about stress and anxiety and well-being and resilience. All are absolute keys, but also management skills. So lawyers aren't trained on how to delegate or how to manage their time or how to give or receive good feedback. So all of that goes into having a well-rounded career and being able to be effective. So I spend a lot of time talking about those topics as well.
Amazing. Jessie, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for sharing. This was so much fun. I really appreciate you having me on and giving me a platform to talk about what's so important.
It's amazing, and I applaud you for the work that you're doing. I know the difference that you're making, and I hope that a lot of attorneys get to see this message and know that you're available as a resource, and there is no shame in getting support. And thank you so much, and have a great day.
Thank you. You too.
All right,
yeah, we'll talk again soon.
Okay, take care.
Take care.